Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
In this thread, share your personal, unexplained paranormal experiences. Not looking for cliché creepypasta or spoopy skeleton stuff. I have a strong feeling that everyone has at least one stir that they are hesitant to share with people, or something they've witnessed that they can't quite explain. Role-playing and jokes aside, I want to hear some interesting and weird stories that are mildly believable, because that's what brings me to /x/. And I think that's the reason a lot of you come here too. I'll go first. Work as a janitor on the third shift. Clean an old office building that used to be a prison back in the day. In the 40s, the prison flooded and several prisoners on the basement floor drowned with no way to get them out. One night, while sweeping and mopping the basement, a female coworker started to scream loudly. I ran around the corner to see what was going on. She was standing outside a closet door, and the handle of her broom was sticking out of the bottom and something was pulling it in. I saw it get pulled in. The door is locked, and I knock on it, demanding that whoever's inside come out. It's the middle of the night, and no one is supposed to be in the building but security and us. Security eventually comes, and we have not left that hallway. We explain the story. Then he unlocks the door. Inside, it's actually a panel behind a door with only 3 inches of space between the door and the wall. And there, her broom is stood up, leaned against the wall. Security guard takes it and hands it to her. We're both hesitant to even touch it. We told everyone we could about this, but always got funny looks.
This happened almost 6 years ago, shortly after I was in a car accident that left me really dinged up. I had trouble walking, broken thumb, permanent nerve damage in one hip, cuts to chest, arms and left side, not life-threatening, but bad enough that I couldn't stay at home with my mother, who had Alzheimer's and dementia because she would smack the ever-loving crap out of me if she found me in bed during the day and call me lazy. So I stayed with the guy I was dating for a couple weeks, figuring I'd heal faster if I was less stressed and wasn't worrying about maintaining my mom in her place for a bit. He worked thirds, so I'd usually take a nap and then get up and wander the house and try to walk without crutches and other supports until he came home. A few days in, I started hearing music right after he left. I figured he'd left a radio on somewhere, so I'd wander around looking for the radio to turn it off. I couldn't find a radio, so I went back to the living room couch and fell asleep. When I woke up, he was home and there was no more music, so I figured he'd turned it off. This happened a few more times. One evening I asked him to turn off his radio before he left because it was annoying. He didn't know what I was talking about. That night, it happened again. Though that time I occasionally heard chatting voices. He wound up coming home on his lunch break, bringing me food. When he came home, the door opening startled me and I fell and I was too prideful to ask for help up. So I made myself as comfortable as I could get on the floor and acted like I was there on purpose. He gives me crap about it, but sits next to me on the floor. The music starts up again and it seems louder than usual. I point it out, he notices it. He looks around the house for an old radio or something his parents might have left there. They were renting their old house to him. Nothing. We eat, get creeped out, he helps me up, gets me in his car and takes me home. He stayed with his parents and left me to deal with my crazy mother because he was creeped out by the music. We never did find out where it was coming from, but over time I've started to think that it might have been an old radio set to a station that only played at night in the floor or the vents in the floor because it was louder when I was closer to the ground.
My old house was a Kibanda camp and spooky stuff always happened. Things like fans turning on by themselves, door and windows closing or opening and even locking. Be me. Be 12 years old. Be alone. Nice. My friend invited me to play video games at his house. I decided to take a bath, lock the doors and close the windows because I'm a coward. Start to wash up. Hear footsteps in the corridor. Nope.wav. Close my eyes and wash my body at light speed. Badend.jpg. My locked door opens like someone throwing themselves against it and the window opens. All doors start to open and close. I cry out of fear. Suddenly everything stops. Neighbor comes to rescue. Can't explain anything, just wear my clothes. Sleep for 2 weeks at my friend's house. That was the scariest thing in my entire life. Chills run down my spine when I remember it.
So this happened to me when I was about 13, 20 now. I lived in a small town in Pennsylvania in a big yellow house that I think used to be either a mansion or a boarding house or something. The place was huge and had 3 floors. Everything a normal house would have being on the first floor, a bedroom and a separate section with a kitchen and bedroom, bathroom and living room with another bedroom. This is where my brother and his girlfriend stayed, my old room being the other door on that floor, and the 3rd floor had a kitchen, bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. This floor became mine after my cousin and her kids moved out. It was blatantly old, had paint chipping off the outside walls, smelled like mothballs through the whole house, and had windows and sliding glass doors on some kind of rope system that must have been common in older houses. Anyways, I had more than a few questionable moments in the house. In my old room on the 2nd floor, I recall one morning where the cymbal on my drum set made a faint noise like something had tapped it. It was about 8 a.m. and I was tired, so I sort of brushed it off thinking it was my cat. About 10 minutes later, while I was sort of half asleep trying to lay back down, my snare drum made a loudish sound. I looked up and my drumsticks that were sitting on it were moved, no longer laying side by side. Again, I was hoping this was just my cat, but looking around the room, I realized he was not in there with me. I was a bit concerned now, but still pretty tired, and being the weekend, I tried going back to sleep. It was a few minutes after this, while laying in bed, I heard a very loud sound right next to my ear. It was like someone breathing in or out really forcefully, and I could even feel it in my ear. I sat straight up with my heart pounding out of my chest and looked around, only to see nothing. I didn't go back into my room for the rest of the day after that. A month or 2 after this, I was sitting in my room one afternoon. I was reading a guitar catalog on my bed. I had this crawl space on the left side of my room, and it was sort of a storage area, nothing but some old wooden planks and a few of my boxes in there. Anyways, I was the only one home besides my brother, who was downstairs taking a nap in his room. Out of nowhere, from in the crawl space, I heard a scream. It sounded like someone yelling the name Sharon in a female voice. It was loud but muffled by the crawl space door. This naturally freaked me out, but I was too scared at that moment to look in there. So I decided to look upstairs to see if my cousin and her kids were up there, but they weren't. Before I checked the house, I wasn't aware that it was just me and my brother was home, and I looked all through the house only to discover nothing but my brother sleeping. I still refused to look in the crawl space until everyone got back home, so if something was there, I'd have help when I needed it. Yet when I did look in there, I found nothing. This was the second major thing to happen to me. So fast forwarding a few more months, my cousin had finally moved out of the top floor apartment, and I got to move in up there. I liked it. I had my own bathroom, kitchen, and 2 rooms, and I was only 13. It was a staircase that led up into the kitchen. To the left was the bathroom. Straight ahead from the stairs was 1 bedroom, and to the right was the door to the room I used. Now, I don't remember ever hearing anything up here, but it had a creepy feeling to it, especially at night. It got darker than usual up there, despite there being windows in every room. It was that kind of darkness that makes a space feel larger than it is, like it's enveloping you and surrounding you. But one night I walked out of my room through the kitchen into the bathroom. I killed a big wasp that was in there, after 5 minutes of effort, and finally used the bathroom. Normal enough night, it was raining and the sound seemed amplified up here. But I liked that. I like rain, and the sound drowned out the silence, which made the darkness a lot easier to handle. After my fiasco with the wasp, I scrubbed my face with my acne medicine and turned off the light. I walked out of the bathroom to my room like I always did, but tonight was different. I don't close my door behind me. I usually turn as I do it and catch a glimpse of the kitchen before the door closes. As I did this, through the halfway closed door in complete darkness, I saw a white misty apparition. Almost like a small cloud of fog, it was about 3 feet off the ground and about 2 feet wide in all directions. It silently floated from left to right into the room in the center of the kitchen and disappeared from my sight. My body is getting cold and my spine is tingling just from typing about it, and I stood there frozen in shock for a few seconds, then quickly shut my door. I couldn't even process what just happened. Without even thinking, I grabbed my blanket and pillow and half walked, half ran down all of the stairs to the living room and laid on the couch, though I didn't sleep until the sun came up. I did not go back into that room for more than 5 minutes for about 2 weeks. I'd only go up there if I needed something, and even then it was only in daylight. After this, nothing really happened. A bump here and a questionable voice there, but nothing serious. I also forgot to mention that for about 5 years after the breathing in my ear thing, I slept with my head sandwiched between my pillows to prevent it from reoccurring. This all really happened to me. and I got goosebumps just remembering it. But yeah, there's my story, anons. Hope you had more fun reading it than I did remembering it.
Family used to live and work on a chicken farm. See pic for example. They were huge. We had like 8 of them. Story didn't actually happen to me, but happened to my oldest brother and dad when they were out there picking up any chickens who had died. After they had gotten done with the first building, my brother noticed a large cat like a tiger or something on the ground watching them. He tells our dad about it, but dad says to just ignore it and continue on. Long story short, it follows them as they move through each building and back home. When they got back, my dad headed out to his other job and my brother grabbed his rifle and pretty much camped outside to try and find it. So not a paranormal story, but still scary. I'm not really sure what kind of big cats are in North Carolina. Bobcats. Whatever, this was probably escaped from a zoo or something because we didn't live near the mountains. Now for the paranormal side. Our grandparents were visiting us and staying for the summer. We had them sleep in kinda a guest room. Throughout the summer, she'd always complain about some girls shaking their bed and bothering them at night. Another story about the oldest bro again. Ever since we moved to that house, bro started having nightmares that an old man kept appearing in. He starts to get paranoid when the man in the dream starts asking if he can have our baby brother and tells our parents about it. So the parents get a shaman to come and do a ritual of sorts to see what's up with this house. Turns out 2 people had died here. An old man who had died alone of a heart attack in the attic, which I'm salty that I never explored out of fear, and a little girl who died of sickness in the room the grandparents had been in. Pretty much gave offerings to the spirit and that he couldn't have the baby brother. Tons of weird things happened at that place. Drove by there 2 years ago and the house had been torn down. The place was pretty old.
About a year ago, on a houseboat trip up the Murray River with my family. On the 2-end day we crossed over the border and into a nature reserve sort of place. Both brother-in-laws and my dad go fishing just downriver, hanging out with my sisters, mum and girlfriend. We are on top of the houseboat relaxing. After a while, they go back inside. I go to grab a beer from the fridge, hear what sounded like a woman screaming from across the river. Run to the side of the boat and look to see if I can see whoever it was. The bush is too thick to see anything. Maybe it was just a fox or something. About an hour later, girlfriend and I went for a walk. We're about 600 meters from the boat at an old, dried-up creek bed. No animals around, but there are old rabbit warrens. Near them are scuff marks and signs of what I assumed was the rabbit's fight for its life. No kangaroos or emus or anything. The air is pungent like the smell of rotting roadkill, like blood and rot mixed into one. At the same time, my girlfriend and I say we should head back. Feels like we are being watched. I take a diverted path back, coming out about 150 meters away from the boat. Weird thing is, when we spoke out aloud, the smell sort of disappeared. That night, about 2 a.m., I wake up from a dead sleep to see my girlfriend laying there with a worried look on her face. She says she just woke up for some reason, casual talking, then this weird howling starts. There's about 3 of these animals making this noise. It sounds like a dog talking, but backwards, as weird as that is. Must be inbred dingoes or something. Listening, I realize the ones that are further off are using the one closer to navigate. MFW, I realized they came out onto the bank where we had earlier that day. MFWW, I have no face, as the howling stopped. A few moments later, we both felt the boat tip slightly, as if something climbed onto the railing. We heard walking all over the roof where we had been earlier that day. Then just silence. We didn't sleep at all after that. I don't know what they were, but my gut was telling me they were bad and not to ever go back there. Picture is a part of the Murray, just further upstream towards civilization.
When I was younger, around 5 to 8, I used to explore the small patch of woods behind my house by myself. This was in the mid to late 90s, and I lived with my adoptive parents who had grown up in the 40s and 50s, so they didn't give a damn about me going out by myself as long as I was back by a certain time. If I'd get lost or stayed out too late, a man, who I assume was a neighbor from the other side of the woods, would show me the way home and give me the usual spiel one gives a child who has wandered off on their own: don't get too far from home, you shouldn't be out here without a parent, yada yada. Anyway, that's not the strange part. My adoptive dad died a month or so before I turned 9. My mom started going nuts because he was the only person who kept her in line. She was in the first stages of Alzheimer's, and even before that kicked in, she was just a generally mean and unpleasant person. She retired from work. Decided the following year not to buy my school supplies with my survivor's benefits, so I went to the neighbor. Not the one on the other side of the woods, but the one right next door, to ask for help. They decide to buy my school supplies if I mow their entire property, huge yard with lots of obstacles, a horse corral and a long path that leads into the woods. I agree, and this becomes a regular thing. When I need something, I mow their property. One of the times I'm mowing, I see two guys in jeans and flannels walking across the property. Everyone in the area wears jeans and flannel, so I don't really pay too much attention. But when I turn the mower back their way, I see that one of the men is the neighbor from the other side of the woods. The other is my deceased dad. I flip out, stand up on the mower, so it shuts off, and I look down at the mower, kinda half-heartedly trying to get it ready to start again, and when I look back to where my dad and the neighbor were, they're gone. Maybe spirits, maybe an afterimage. No idea.
The house I grew up in was supposedly haunted. Dozens of people saw, felt, heard. Whether or not any of it was real is up for debate. I saw a ghost at a young age allegedly, but can't remember it. It was our neighbor's dead mother according to the description I gave. I made a thread about my many experiences about a year ago. A few years ago I saw a UFO hovering near a power station approximately 1/4 of a mile away. It was a silver ball about the size of a small car. I say hovering because it was totally still, no movement at all. My Stepson also saw it. Balloon, maybe, I won't speculate. A year later I saw another UFO. One night, approximately 11 p.m., I stepped out for a cigarette with the missus across the road. Probably 15 meters away was an orange pulsating ball of light. It was on the path. She turns and says, "WTF is that?" My first thought was it was a fallen street lamp, but it was too big. About the size of a space hopper. I turned and said, "It's one of those Chinese lanterns." As I said that, it started lifting up, straight up, slowly. It got to a height of about 20 meters, then stopped dead. No movement, no sound. After about 20 seconds, it shot off towards Vauxhall at about 10 to 20 miles per hour. Straight line, constant speed. Whatever that was. It was either controlled or sentient. But I'm 100% certain it was not a Chinese lantern. No way.
This happened semi-recently. Be coming home from work. The walk is about 30 minutes from work to home. Normal walk, no seedy people or areas. As I'm walking I feel kinda weird but assume it's because I just worked 12 hours. I light up a cigarette and continue my walk. As I'm walking I see a shadow figure on the wall of a building, looked kinda off. Like it was facing me but maybe someone is nearby and I just don't notice them, right? I quickly forget and continue on my way. Blocks away the same thing happens. This time I'm sure nobody is around yet the shadow figure is still just facing me on the wall. I start to think I'm just exhausted. It could be anything making this familiar shape. I continue. Okay, so it gets a bit fuzzy here because I'm not really sure how to explain it, but another block or so away it happens again. I'm pretty freaked out and start to walk a bit faster. Figure that was one static and facing me appears to look to its side and start to speed walk like me. I bolt it. About a block away from home I peek behind me to see a figure in a poncho or something. I don't know, that's just what it reminded me of, but like I said, no texture or anything, just black, but imagine just black, no color or anything, and this time not as a shadow but like a real person just standing there. Bolt into home, figure I'm safe now and get all comfy and stuff. Crack open a cold beer and head to the window for a cigarette. There it was again, this time perched on the adjacent apartment roof. It lifted its head up and its eyes had this weird glow, kinda shiny, almost like a reflector. Just like that it jumped up and vanished into thin air. I don't remember much after that. I finished my beer and went to sleep, but for about a month after that I would get weird phone calls. Also, to add about the phone calls, I had just gotten a new phone number. At this time someone named Cole kept calling and just asking what there is to do around here. I was like, "I don't know you pal, wrong number," but he kept insisting he doesn't make mistakes like that and only shows when needed. A total wacko.
Be about 12. It's about 8 or 9 p.m. Me and my siblings chilling home alone watching TV. The streetlight is always turning off cause this neighborhood kinda sucks. We forgot to turn on the porch light, so it's pitch black out there. Brother is the oldest, so he decides it's time for bed and turns the TV off. We hear someone storm up the rickety steps to the front door and start banging on the screen door. We all panic, but we were sorta trained for this. We duck low and make our way to the kitchen to hide behind the large table. We all grab knives. We wait there as whoever is out there savages our screen door. They finally rip the screen door open and start banging on the front door. I hear the distinctive sound of my dad's motorcycle coming down the road. There's 2 windows facing the front yard next to the door. When my dad pulls up, light shines through onto the wall behind us and the banging immediately stops. The way he pulled in should have shown the light on the attacker, but there was no shadow. We wait in silence, expecting to hear a scuffle. Dad kills the motor, walks up the stairs and opens the door. He even has a bit of trouble opening the screen door because it sticks sometimes. My brother looks out to make sure it's Dad. It is. We all come out and run to him. He's confused as to why we're so freaked out and we tell him what happened. He says he didn't see anyone and the screen door was closed when he pulled up.
Be kid, around 9 or 10. Mother signs me up for a local summer group to get me out of the house. Plan to visit Malahide Castle in Dublin. When we get there, it's a fun sunny day. We played around in the grounds for a while. Pretty good so far, excited for the house tour. Lady starts showing us around. The place is full of low ceilings and mounted deer heads and all the other historical castle stuff. She tells us about the place's history. We come to a drawing room of sorts and show us a grainy photograph of the room we were in. The room was practically the same, and in the mirror hung over the grand fireplace was the figure of a man. Not in the room, only in the mirror. She probably expected to scare us, but we seemed inconvenienced. I decided to stand where the man in the picture would have been standing, to see myself in the mirror as he did. The area was notably chilled, which surprised me. I stepped aside and said how cold it was, and my peers flocked over to feel it too. The first few agreed, but the rest didn't. Despite the heat, I was still cold. As we continued the tour, I became colder and colder until one of the teachers suggested we take a break and have lunch. Outside, in midsummer, I was shivering, an old jacket from the coach we got here in wrapped around me. I could barely think, I couldn't eat, I felt nauseous and pale, and it was pretty scary. I was the only one who felt like this. Nobody else had adverse side effects. The supervisors decided to bring us home early, with little protest from the others. Everyone was tired from playing. On the coach, the further I got from the place, the warmer I felt. By the time we were back on our side of Dublin, I was inhaling my neglected lunch, good as new.
This Thursday, working as a groundsman for a posh old school. Wandering around the grounds picking litter when I find a statue hidden behind some climbers. Get out the trusty secateurs and go to trim them back. Suddenly get a gut feeling of getting the hell away from here. Ignore it and go for a closer look at the statue. It's badly weathered, but is clearly a bearded man with a staff. Get another runaway now feeling, decide to agree with it. Come back the next day with a coworker to look at the scary statue. Find it missing from the pedestal and laying 20 meters away in the undergrowth, with ivy and other plants growing over it. I'll take a picture of it Monday if the thread is still alive. Freaky shit.
Be me and bro. Be camping in a pop-up camper on private property. Literally nothing on property except a clearing to park, then dense woods. Property is surrounded by government-owned land. Anyways, the day is completely normal. Fish and hunt and drink some beers. Head to bed around 9 p.m. Brother sleeping on one side of the camper, me on the other. Fall asleep quickly. Wake up around 3 or 4 to heavy breathing. Neither of us snore and it's just the two of us. Think he's screwing with me. You know I got this rifle loaded, sarcasm, don't make me use it. Breathing gets heavier. To the point where I'm annoyed. Stand up and move forward to turn on the light. Kick something warm and hairless. Hear scrambling on the ground. Screw that, turn around and grab where my rifle is. Pitch black. Door slams open. Hear wheezing and what sounds like a bunch of feet running away. Turn on the light and step to the door. Everyone walks the dyno, not JK. Look out the door, rifle in hand, freaking out at this point. Still kind of think it was my brother, so I turn on the light to check. Turn on the light and he's sound asleep in a drunken haze. Wake him up and tell him what happened. He says we should go find what it was because we have guns. Well, okay. Open door. See clear trail in dirt. Looks like it had more than 4 legs. And it barely lifted them off the ground, so it had a sliding look to it. Leads into the woods. He changes his mind, and we stay up till sunrise listening to music. Leave that day.
I have a story that happened when I was 11. I don't necessarily think it was an abduction, but I never could think of a good explanation. B11, summertime hanging out with my friend D. D and I love to explore, always exploring the woods and abandoned houses. One day we decided we were going into the woods behind a recreational baseball field. Nothing out of the ordinary in these woods. It's around 12 when we left to go into the woods. I remember because we just ate lunch at D's house, and his house was the closest to the woods. We enter the woods and start using our pocket knives to mark X's on the trees in case we get lost. We mark every other tree. We get about a half mile in the woods, it's around 1 o'clock now. We start hearing something within 50 feet of us moving fast through the woods. The woods have gotten pretty dense by this point, so it's hard to get a visual. Figure it's just a deer or some other medium-sized animal, maybe even a small bear, but it was not a common area for them. Keep walking through the woods. We begin to hear a loud low-frequency humming noise. It's almost like you can feel it through your body. It stops after about 2 minutes. We continued walking, but now we hear the moving again. And now we see something, a tall figure running about the same distance as before in the woods. It's on 2 legs bipedal. We start running now, into the woods more and more. Whatever this is running the same distance from us, in the same direction. I trip on a root and D stops to help me. I get up, but we begin to hear this humming sound again. It's louder, more powerful than before. We start to move, but we notice whatever that humanoid thing that was stalking us is now looking at us. I couldn't make out the face. There were these 3 glowing dots on it, which were not symmetrical at all. Start getting light-heated, it becomes really hard to move. I fall over and black out. Same thing happens to D. I wake up, nowhere in the same area as before. In a patch of birch trees, they are all dead. I start yelling D's name, yell for about 3 to 5 minutes. My legs are very weak, I am slightly dizzy and feel queasy. I eventually D call my name, so I start to move towards the direction his voice is coming from. See him, try to run towards him, but my legs give out. Get up and begin walking towards him. I notice he has a bunch of scratches on his arm. I ask what happened and he said he doesn't know, but he also says I have the same. I asked him if he knew where we were and he didn't, so we decided to walk south. I had a compass on my watch. When we began the journey, we headed north. Walk for about 10 minutes south and we begin to hear this humming again. Everything goes black, but I can hear for a couple minutes. I hear walking around me and D and the sound of something being dragged on the ground. Eventually, I can't hear anymore and I wake up in the woods where me and D first blacked out. We wake up and it's dark. I look at my watch and it's 8 p.m. We just start running south as fast as possible and we don't stop. That humanoid is stalking us again. Those green flashing dots have a tracer effect against the darkness of the night. We run and run and run. We eventually got to the edge of the woods. The humanoid is gone. We can't hear it or see it. We go home for the night. We never saw anything like that again. We went into the woods a day or so afterwards and on the trees that we marked the X's were scratched up. Looked like a bear marking a tree. I still talk to D now. Every so often we will get a beer and he still remembers distinctively as I do that very, very strange day.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.